Okay, Adamas,
Yeah.
you there?
There we go. Yeah, I'm there. Yeah. Yeah. I can
All
see you.
right. So the topic is storming heaven and DNA tattooing.
Yeah. Well, all of this has come out of the discovery of the Omnis. It's a new type of alchemical slash homeopathic remedy I've discovered, which allows one to deliver a really powerful imprint to the body, and with repeated dosing, it basically imprints itself onto the body. I mean, the analogy I've been using lately is if someone punches you on the shoulder once, you may like you forget about it, but if someone punches you 20 times, that then goes into muscle memory and you remember that. I mean, that's a negative image, but it serves to show how the body learns through repeated exposure. I mean, the best analogy we all have with that is like driving. You know, in the beginning we drive and it's a difficult thing to do, but through repeated exposure, we learn and it becomes an automatic thing which we do, and we don't even have to think about it. Now, what the omnis represent, these potencies, is the ability to imprint certain frequencies onto our body, onto our DNAs. That's hence the DNA tattooing, in a way that it becomes learned, it becomes actual muscle memory, and it becomes intuitive memory. So we don't even have to think about it. So it allows us to incorporate whether it's like burnt diamond dust or monatomic gold or the reishi mushroom or some of the adaptogens like ginseng or the other. I mean, really, there is no limit. You could even tattoo something like your favorite holy spot. Like we could do Stonehenge. I could make an omni of Stonehenge, the memory held in the stones there, omnify that, and then one could consume that and essentially take on the knowledge of Stonehenge by becoming a part of the frequency of the stones, or Machu Picchu, or the pyramid, the Sphinx. I mean, there is no limit in terms of what we can do. Now, another potential usage for this, and I've mentioned this before, is, for example, there's a remedy in homeopathy made from the persimmon, the kauri tree. Now, this tree was used for radiation poisoning because it was the only tree that survived the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. There was basically the nuclear blast, and this tree was the only tree or only living thing left standing for miles. Now, this remedy, the persimmon, can be used for radioactive protection. But, for example, if one were to omnify it, where, I mean, at a guess, I would say the omnis are, say, 20 or 30 times stronger than homeopathic remedies. And in certain cases, they're even stronger than the original. I made one from royal jelly, which is part of the All Victorious mix, and it actually turns out to be even stronger than the original royal jelly. When I take the original royal jelly, I sort of feel it, but when I take the Omni, there's a definite effect from it. You can actually feel the kick as it almost enhances one's cells. So, what I've stumbled across here is a huge discovery in terms of shortcutting the process of the body's learning of new frequencies. So, the South Americans talk a lot about dieting a substance. So, for example, they will consume small amounts of, say, ayahuasca or San Pedro on a daily basis for weeks or sometimes months on end. But with the Omnis, one can essentially short circuit this. I've just come off 7 days of dieting salvia, the Omni of it, and I feel it's actually become part of my system. It's engrafted into me. My body's learnt this technology. I've become part of the plant plant's become part of me. Whatever syntax you want to use, it's almost irrelevant, but there's been a symbiosis, a joining, a mixing together of the two frequencies, and now it is a part of me, and I have that as my DNA tattoo, my astral armor, whatever you want, but it's as part of my syntax bank in the frequency field that I can actually draw on at any point, and it's there as an ally, which will run simultaneously with my present state, and is there if I need it, but it's also informing me on certain levels. I mean, just with the salvia armor which I've been taking, it has made my life far more fluid. Everything is just a lot easier now. It's been very strange, but it's almost like the struggle, the effort, or the resistance I would normally have with reality. I'm not playing that movie anymore. It's very much, Dale Pendle, who was one of the entheogenic greats. He was a great researcher on the entheogens, said that salvia, for example, is the most zen of all plants except for rice. That was his personal joke. Rice is possibly the most zen plant in existence. But, this just to be in the flow, in the mood, which echoes a lot of the Dzogchen stuff of like not breaking ease with anything. So, but the point here is having consumed the substance, the salvia in this Omni format, it is now part of my frequency. And this is why the new tagline, I intend to start a company, Omni Ultratech, and the byline for that is Storming Heaven, because it represents the ability to take on frequencies which would normally be external, but then we can now learn them, internalize them. Monatomic gold, for example, is found in the pyramids as a white powder. It has huge health regenerative properties. There's monatomic silver, there's monatomic iridium. I mean, there is no limit in terms of what one can consume. And the nice thing about the Omnis is that they act so powerfully and so deeply that they flood the body with this frequency. I mean, if you want to use another analogy I've been using to understand this is it almost like, well, instead of getting into water, one gets into water with a certain color dye, and the dye seeps into the skin, and we almost become dyed that color. So we might be dyed a light blue or a green or red. It actually seeps into us. I mean, obviously, you wouldn't want to take on certain frequencies, but there are a lot of really positive frequencies. For example, the adaptogens, ginseng, schizandra, rhodiola. These are substances which help us adapt to stress more readily and make the functioning reishi another one. It's a major tonic. It just helps us to deal with the stresses of life more fluidly. I mean, the analogy I like to use there is it just gives us a sixth gear. It's like, it's struggling a bit in fifth. Okay, put it in sixth, so it cruises a bit. It just gives you a bit more of a fluid motion ability rather than having to strain the engine. Because I don't know about you, but for myself, I'm just adding more and more to my plate. So I have to ensure that my own organism runs more and more fluidly. So there's less and less resistance because then I can take on more and more without strain. Whereas if I don't have that fluidity, then it's going to start taxing the body, and that'll start impinging on various aspects of my life. So this is really, the image of storming heaven comes from the idea behind the Titans having been bound by the gods originally, and then getting free, and then storming heaven to return. The Titans being the original creators of the gods, they were then bound in Tartarus. Now, Prometheus, for example, was a Titan who stole fire from the gods and brought it to man as his gift to humanity. The gods, in their rage, because they wanted to keep mankind in a state of slavery, bound Prometheus, this Titan, to a rock where he was doomed to have his liver eaten out every day by a vulture and then have it regrow the next day. So this was his punishment by the gods for bringing fire to man. So the storming heaven of Omni Ultratech is really this bringing the technology of this giant technology back to man so that we can get the powers that we used to have. I mean, whether it's telepathy, time travel, there is no real limit I'm putting on this. I mean, if one can find a substance which can mimic those powers, then by consuming it, by dieting it, by having it infringe or not infringes, because there's the idea of infringement is a negative one, but like merge with your cells, then one can take that and then spread it back into the world once it's a part of one. It's really just taking it on, as much as when we eat an apple, it becomes part of our cells, but an apple doesn't in itself have any medicinal action. When we consume a medicine, say we take some echinacea, it'll have a temporary effect on our body. It temporarily improves our immune system, but we need to keep on taking the physical material to have an ongoing effect. But if we consume this substance in an omni format, it allows our entire body to be awash with this thing, and then our body recognizes this as a similar substance, and we learn to know this as part of ourselves, and then it becomes part of our armor, part of our DNA tattoos. I had a vision of literally tattooing different things, like the diamond dust tattooed over here, and like maybe a ginseng patch over there, and like a reishi one there, and some gold tattooed across the chest. All these things we can actually form part of our DNA armor. I mean, and even potentially reprogram the DNA by saying, well, okay, For example, I'm working on an immortality formula. It's still a ways off, but the idea there is like if we can tell the body strongly enough and enough times that what it needs to do is not to age anymore, but the new program we're delivering to it is that we will live forever, and we tell it enough times and strongly enough, this will then become, we will retask the machine, the body. It will say, okay, new information has been received. The memo has come down from on high, wherever the on high is, that now we're not going to start degrading after a certain time. The telomeres are not going to start breaking down. Astragalus, for example, another herb I intend to omnify, is what it does is it regenerates the telomeres, which break down as we age. So by dietating this in the Omni format, we can tell the body, okay, well, we're not aging anymore. We're not going to break down. We're not going to start fraying and cause systems to start breaking down. There's another plant this friend of mine's bringing me, which is supposed to regrow hair, which I'm obviously very keen on. Yeah, and all men I think would be very keen on the substance. Now, once again, in the herbal format, you know, you need to keep consuming it. And even then, I mean, for me, I'm lazy. I don't want to have to consume something for the rest of my life. I want to have it for a week, 2 weeks, max a month, consume it every day, and to know that that is then part of my system. I've imbibed the substance. It is now a part of me. And what that part of me is saying, it's saying, regrow the hair. How it works, the exact biochemistry, we're moving way beyond biochemistry here. We're not looking at a straight chemical a chemical tells B chemical to do C action, where we're actually saying to the architecture that produces these chemicals in the first place, okay, new directive. Now the directive is you will keep producing or not producing this chemical which stops hair from growing or helps hair regenerate, and this will become part of your living architecture, your living memory. So this is really the idea of DNA tattooing that I'm talking about. And I mean, the field is wide open. If people want to bring me substances to Omnify, I'm happy to do this. I mean, for a fee because it's going to take me a bit of time to do it, but it'll be a reasonable fee. So if people have a favorite substance, if they can bring me some of that in the crude, I can then give it back to them, return it to them, and they can then consume this and become, whether it's a part of an animal, it makes no difference really what one wants to Omnify. The process is of holding something precious enough or valuing it enough out there to want it to be a part of you, to take it into. I mean, even if it's one's favorite animal that's getting old and dying, I could take a whisker, I could grind up the whisker and omnify that, so you actually take on the memory of the cat or the dog or whatever it is. That there is no limit on this technology. I'm just scratching the surface and it's going in all directions. I'm just super excited about where it's going. And yeah, I'm still looking at the possibilities, but I'm acknowledging no possibilities, no end of the possibilities. We are storming heaven now. This is what it's about. We are taking back our power, and we're going wherever we want to go with it. We're saying we're no longer slaves. We're no longer bound by the normal restrictions of even stuff like aging, of time, of space, of molecular science. There is a level beneath that which informs the molecular science, and if we intrude at that point, I don't like the word intrude because there's a bad connotation to that, but if we merge with that level and add information at that point, if we add a new operating system to it, at that point we will actually have a different outcome, and the outcome will be one we actually want, instead of being bound by like, oh, I'm going to get old and die. It's like rubbish. Says who? I'm not playing into that movie. So I'm no longer playing into that. I'm still tweaking the immortality formula, but you'll be the first to get it, Amanda, when I get it, because you'll be a
So,
part of this whole movie.
so it's very exciting, and I'm just thinking, as the triple shot latte starts to kick in,
Yes.
like my thinking capacity is returning. But um, there's a lot to say here, and I'd like to maybe, do a couple of conversations on it and break it down for people. Because there's the epigenetics, the science of how epigenetics has been spoken about and discovered, and essentially talking about epigenetics, but in a different kind of way, talking about the fact that DNA is not fixed, that it can be shifted to express itself in a different way according to application of a signal. And that's what they spoke about. I mean, Bruce Lipton was one of the first people to speak about the signal coming from the environment that affects the genes. So, we used to think that DNA was fixed and that DNA was the blueprint. And now through the discovery of epigenetics, they've understood that the signal from the environment switches on propensities in the genes. And so, how do we understand that? Well, if you're mastering your environment, then your signal is by choice. So, your thoughts, for example, create a signal into the genes. So, if you're sending a signal of self loathing, say, for example, into your body all day long as a kind of biofeedback, because your brain is a signal, producer, and your thoughts are, changeable.
Mm, 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 mm.
So, I mean, as people start to master their own attention, you could say, or concentration, or ability to focus, then they are in charge of the signal to the environment, which is they are their own environment, essentially. And then, um,
Can I
this
just add
whole,
something here? Because something
yeah, yeah, yeah,
interesting
yeah.
came up. Like what you're talking about, if, for example, people wanted to, say, catch love as a frequency, I mean, all one would really need to do would be to beam or focus intensively on a body of water, like a glass of water, beam love into that. You could write love on the side, and then I could take
That's
that and
right. That's Dr.
omnify that.
Emoto's research.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But what I'm saying is like the memory of water is one thing, you can get that, but the omnification of that multiplies it 30 times. So it'll be that much stronger. So you get a solid blast, like a triple latte dose of love, as opposed to just like the frilly butterfly version, if you want a more hardcore version of love, or more punchy version. I mean, there is no limit. One can take the memory of water, use it, and omnify it, and actually get a far stronger charge, and then need to repeat it less often. And if people are going through a state of depression, oh, just take a dose of that, and then just feeling the love, kind of like the way the mother's milk works, but even more intensively because it's just that frequency captured. I mean, obviously, the more people you use to capture that frequency, the stronger it would become. But I'm just giving you a potential application to that. And obviously, that changing the DNA of, even if, say, depression was in your DNA, if you flooded it strongly enough with enough love, then you would cease to be depressed and essentially change it.
Yeah, exactly. So that's amazing technology. And um, wow, there's just so many things to say about it. So it's about choosing. I mean, what you're offering to people is, okay, understanding the fact that we are a product of our own signal, essentially. And now you're
Sure.
saying, okay, so here are some signal options. Here's
Yes,
this,
yes.
and this.
If you don't
So
like it,
which do you want
change
to
it.
experience, right?
Totally. Yes.
And so,
Tailor make your day.
yeah. So it's like you're offering music, you know?
Music or moods of the day, but strong moods of the day that can potentially override negative moods. And also beyond that, of teaching the body to self-generate its own moods. So one doesn't always need to externally self-medicate to like, oh, I'm feeling tired. Yeah. So I mean, potentially if we had an omni of something quite stimulating, you could take that and you might still want the coffee. I mean, I'm a piglet. I would have the coffee and this, because that's just
I
me.
know.
But some
Unfortunately,
people
my ABC is finished. I was like,
I see.
like an addict. I was like, come on,
I'll send you a bigger bottle next time.
thanks. Okay, so I just want to do this in sections. So if you don't mind, I just want to come to the end of this section, keep it short and sweet, and then I'd like to chat to you quickly, and then we can start over with another section.
Okay. I just want to add something quickly. If people want Omnis or they want Omnis made up of certain things, they can get hold of me on adam@mbuddhas.com. That's mbuddhas.com. adam@mbuddhas.com. Yeah, and we'll talk, yeah, because it's as I said, I'm building something new here, and part of that will be people actually bringing these substances to me, and I'll return it to them in the omnified form, and then it can really be a personal thing. I mean, whether it's you want the the memory of one's precious dog, or you have a particular crystal you need to be transformed in this way, or it makes no difference, or you just want love, in that sense, or a particular emotion. I'm here for that. Yeah. So talk to me. We'll discuss it. We'll make a plan. It won't be too expensive either. So yeah. Okay. That's my little
All
pitch.
right, fantastic. So let's continue the conversation in part two.
Okay.
All right, see you
Yep.
now.
Right.